You're selling online, but you want to sell in stores. Brick and mortar retail, Walmart, Costco, Target, Barnes& and Noble, that sort of thing. But how do you do that? What are these companies looking for? Those are tough questions. And that's why we brought on an expert, Yohan Jacob, retail channel management consultant at Retailbound. He knows a lot about how retail distribution works, and more specifically, how you can make it work for you. Now we're going to cut to the interview in just a minute, but real quick, my name is Brandon. This video is brought to you by Fulfillrite. We ship orders for e-commerce and crowdfunding. Link below for more details. Quotes are free. Now, one last quick note. We edited this with a light touch because we wanted to keep it lo-fi and simple and honest, just like a couple of professionals on a Zoom call. Okay, let's cut to that interview. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Brandon.
So I guess I'll start with the first question that to me seems like the obvious one, which is, what are the first steps that a brand should take if they want to ultimately end up in major retailers?
Great question, right? So the first step that brands should consider when getting to retail is one, do they think that retail makes sense for them, right? A lot of brands think, oh, they think of the glory, well, be it Best Buy or Apple or Costco, a lot of work, right? From management, it's stress on the profit margins and the team, inventory constraints, right? Fulfillment and shipping, right? A lot of stuff, right? So I think for brands that want to get into retail, it's not an easy, sure, let's do it. It's something you got to think out strategically. If it's part of a long-term growth plan, great. If you're looking for a more short-term fix, I would say continue to stay with D2C, by the way.
Mhm. And it seems like there's a strong case for staying with D2C. Like, you don't necessarily have to go to retail. It's just a lot of folks seem to like to do that.
Yeah, I think that there's, with D2C, it depends on how nichey the product is, depending on how complex it is to sell. Because in most major box retailers, it's on a shelf, in a box, right? You don't have a dedicated landing page, in a store, right, for your product, right? So a little more challenging. And I think for brands that want to control the narrative with their customer, DC is a great place to go, right? But for brands that want to expand, right, retail is a great place because today, right now, even with online being very strong, it still represents 30% of overall sales. In store or brick and mortar represents 70% of sales. So I'm at a Costco, I'm walking in, and oh, it's a really cool product. Maybe it's online on Amazon, but I don't have time to wade through thousands of pages online on Amazon where I'm already at Costco buying milk and diapers, and oh, I find your product on a shelf. I'll
Mhm.
probably most likely make a purchase at that, by the way.
Mhm. That makes sense. And if you're selling a product that just fits in with the idea of wider distribution, it sounds like that's when you would want to make a swing for major retailers. But
Yeah, I
I
would
am
say,
sure.
Brandon, to get into retail, there's really two major advantages.
Mhm.
One, getting into retail, like a Best Buy or a Walmart, gives you street cred or
Mhm.
legitimacy to your brand. I mean, no offense, you and I can go to China, get our own iPhone case, right?
Mhm.
Have your company fulfill the orders, right? And put on Amazon. Are we a
Mhm.
brand? No, we're not a brand, right? But if you get your product onto the shelf or online or in print at a Best Buy, QVC, Apple, Costco, now you're a brand because they don't take every Tom, Dick, and Harry into their assortment, right? So that's one reason why getting your product into a retailer gives you street cred that you are a brand, not just some knucklehead like you and me who just bought something off the shelf in China and slap our name on it. The second reason why retail may be a fit for you for a long-term play, it gives you access to millions of customers, right? Remember, I can do DTC. I've spent a lot of money on Google ads, Facebook ads, influencers, drive people to my website. It's very expensive, right? Yeah, I make more profit, but we net out all the marketing fees. I'm probably gonna be breaking even or underwater from a DTC perspective. Where if I get into retail, yeah, I give up upfront some margin to a Best Buy or Target. But think of the millions of customers shop Best Buy, bestbuy.com, and so forth. So getting a retail could be a good long-term strategy for brands that want to expand their brand outside of their DC space.
That makes sense. Now, of course, they're going to be careful who they give out street cred to and who they give access to customers to. So I'm curious, like, what are these major retailers looking for when they decide to stock new products?
So they look at a couple things here. One, they look at the product itself. Is there a, will the product drive top line sales for my company, right? If I'm a buyer at Best Buy, right? Will it drive bottom line profits? Then that pays the bill, right? Keeps the lights on at the stores at Best Buy. And finally, will it sell X number of times through my warehouse? Like if it sits in my warehouse for a long time, not good. Those are the three basic KPIs, brand. It's sales, profits, inventory turns. That's generally speaking. But when they look at a product, right, they look, hey, let's say I make Bluetooth speakers. Well, I'm out there, right? A lot of Bluetooth speakers out there, right? What makes you different? Is there a certain feature that you are showing that they're missing in their store? Is it a certain price point? Maybe they have speakers at $20.99, $40.99, and $50.99. I'm missing that $30.99 price point, right? But buyers look at find ways that they want products that are unique and different, that can drive sales, right? And the brand they're working with is a partnership versus, hey, I sell products to you, Best Buy, you're on your own. No, it should be Best Buy and the vendor working together to create this great partnership to drive sales for the greater good.
Mhm. Yeah, so it seems like they wouldn't want it to overlap with stuff that they're already selling too much anyway. They want it to actually be unique so that it stands out and somebody's got a chance of buying it. And
Correct.
for that matter, they just want to see a real chance that there's, a meaningful opportunity for sales there. And on top of that, got to be easy to work with. And preferably somebody who's invested in their success as well. Is that about right?
That wow, you took the words out of my mouth. I think that a lot of buyers, and I was one of them for many years, right? We feel like, hey, these brands reach out to us, maybe they get the product onto the shelf, and then off they go to the next retailer. Uh-uh. Your job once you get into retail, right? Your job's not done once the product's placed. It's just begun. It's about building awareness, driving sales, right? Managing the inventory, managing logistics, right? So it's a lot of work, right? But for the ones that do it, right? It creates more opportunities for you versus you just stay in your own DC world.
That makes sense. So, with that in mind, what are some of the mistakes that a lot of brand owners make when they're trying to get into retail?
One of the biggest mistakes that I see young brands make is they think that they have the most unique product in the world, right? There's a lot of products out there, right? So you be able to clearly articulate why your product is a fit for that retailer. Best Buy and Walmart are the two major retailers have different audiences. QVC and Costco, different audiences, right? So be able to articulate why that retailer's demographic would gravitate to your product, right? I think a lot of young brands think their product fits all type of retailers. That may be true for some, but not for many, right? Um, Two, one of the biggest mistakes that young brands make is they think retailers pay up front for their products. No, retailers work on terms, right? They don't pay upfront. They don't pay a deposit. Typically, retailers pay between 30 to 90 days, 60 being the average. So if you're not capitalized to wait 30 to 90 days to get paid by a retailer, right? That's another mistake. Oh, I'm not. If I'm not capitalized, I shouldn't be going to retail. Inventory. Another big mistake a lot of young brands make is they think, oh, I need a lot of inventory up front to work with a retailer. That's incorrect. Typically, most retailers start small, maybe buy a case pack or two that you may drop ship from your local 3PL, right? And based on sales, they will increase orders, right? So you don't need to have a million units sitting in your warehouse. You need enough to keep them in stock online or how many stores they give you as a test. And then finally, the biggest mistake that a lot of young brands make, and I kind of alluded earlier, is they, oh, I get the product into Best Buy, my job's done. Best Buy do all the work. Unless you're Sony or LG, Best Buy is not in the short term going to market your products to your customers. but a platform for you to be successful or not. But it's up to you in the beginning to generate that demand, building that brand awareness, right? Then once that's going, then Best Buy, will chip in to drive sale. But those are the common mistakes a lot of young brands make when they're thinking about retail as part of their long-term growth plan.
Now, I want to get back to the financial stuff in a minute because there's more to unpack with that. But just a couple of comments. First, it seems very interesting to me that like a lot of these stores will just start with a smaller amount of inventory and not go for like say a full run of something. And obviously it makes sense when you say it out loud, right? Like you tell me this and I have no objection to that at all.
Well,
But for some reason,
thing with store, they have a lot of backroom stockroom
right.
space. It's very small. So if it's a think if it's a JBL portable
Hmm.
speaker, right? Let's say based on sales and shelf space, you can put three on a shelf and maybe two in the back and maybe three in the back stockroom. So maybe the case pack,
Hmm.
inner case pack is six from JBL. So they would ship an inner case pack to a Best Buy store with three on the shelf
Hmm.
for customers like you and I to take with, and two or three units in the back room to replenish.
Hmm.
But they don't have room to stock 40, 60, 80 portable JBL speakers because they have other products they have to also
Hmm.
stock. So based on popularity, based on promotions, based on sell-through, it depends how much inventory they need in the store to keep in stock. And get inventory for all retailers is no one expense on their P&L, not
Hmm.
personnel, right? It's inventory, and their job is to keep that inventory as lean as possible and only invest in opportunity. They think it's going to really drive real time growth for their stores.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And that first part that you said about just well, to me, like, it really sounds like a lot of what causes trouble is just marketing research failures, not being able to make a solid pitch to these guys, like, not taking a look at what they're selling and what their competitors are selling for that
Right.
matter, and being able to make a real case for your product sitting on their shelf, taking up who knows amount of money once the accountants do their math on it. You've got to be able to answer the questions that they're going to have in advance about why should this thing be here in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah. So you had mentioned the financial stuff. So I actually want to get to that at an earlier point than I had
Sure.
initially anticipated when I was kind of outlining what I wanted to ask you. So you had said something about 60 days. So usually having like 60-day terms. Is that like, do they buy the product, say, on consignment, and you have to buy it back if they don't sell it? Is it typically something like that?
Sure. So there's two types of terms. There's consignment terms where
Okay.
they'll pay you as it sells through, and then there's I call the regular net 30, 60, 90 payment terms, right?
Hmm.
I would say majority of retailers are the latter and the former. So they'll actually, if you're working with Best Buy US or Costco US, right, that they're going to do terms, right? They're going to buy it at this price. You ship them the inventory on December 11th, right? It's received December 11th, and by February 11th, give or take, you get paid, in full, right? But some retailers, like Best Buy Canada, Staples US, they like the consignment, where hey, they want to because again, inventory is a very expensive number on their P&L. So
Hmm.
to keep that number as low as possible, they kind of they kind of bank it on the brand's dollar, right? And so they said, well, we'll do consignment, right? But we only pay you when it sells. However, with consignment, simply payment terms are sooner. So if you're on consignment with Staples, it's probably 30 terms, right?
Hmm.
Versus if you were they're buying it and paying you full right, it's probably 60 or 90 terms. So you get lesser
Hmm.
terms if you're on consignment, or longer term if it's a normal buy sell relationship with you and the
Hmm.
retailer.
So that's naturally going to be a lot different than what folks are used to if they're selling online, where it's like you sell the product, you make the money then. So this is like a broader question for you. How
Yeah.
does somebody make that transition from selling online and being successful to retail distribution?
Now that's the age-old question. It's never easy, right?
I knew that was not going to be a softball.
Yeah. So for brands that want to get into retail, we always want to say you want to start small. It's extremely rare to go from Target.com Target to all 800 store Target overnight. It takes time to build that, right? So we tell brands that who say I'm ready for retail, identify who are the key retailers, what makes sense, right? What should I look for, right? Well, we always say start small. So it might be more independent retailers, regional retailers, maybe BestBuy.com, Target.com, right? And make sure three things are happening before you expand a bigger opportunity. One, your sales are consistent, right? That it's not up and down like a roller coaster. That every month you're getting consistent sales from your regional.com online partners, right? The thing you want to look at as a criteria before you go after big opportunities is your pipeline. Is it bulletproof, right? In 2020, a lot of chip shortages, a lot of 3PLs were stressed to the max, trying to ship out toilet paper and hand sanitizers, right? So is your supply chain bulletproof? Do you have a ample stock to ship to your retail partners at any given moment? And then final last criteria before you expand into retail is cash flow, right? If you're getting paid on time by the retailers, that makes sense. So once sales, inventory, and cash flow are humming along, then brand it makes sense to go after bigger retail. We always caution small brands, start small. Maybe it's a regional retailer that has 20 stores, right? Much easier to, if you make a mistake, it's easier to adjust than working with Target that has about a little under 2,000 stores, right? So start small, test, sales, inventory, cash flow, and once you start seeing some opportunity, then it makes sense brand to go after those bigger, well-known retailers like Best Buy, Target, Walmart, example.
In public relations, it's a very similar concept where it's like you don't necessarily go to get featured in the New York Times first thing. You go for your local news or like some industry specific stuff. And sometimes you can just trade your way up the food chain. You get reference in one thing that's proof for the next biggest and the next biggest and so on. And it makes sense that retail would work a similar way. Like you don't even necessarily have to go for a national chain or even like a regional one. You could even start by getting a few units in just local stores and then using that to kind of test things out. And that approach, in addition to like being practical, also kind of helps with the cash flow things, which I have to imagine would be quite difficult when you talk about the long periods of time waiting for payment, which can be quite devastating for businesses that are not used to operating that way.
Yeah, and also, just the margin and inventory is just one cost, or cost, right? Marketing costs, right?
Mhm.
So, where it's if that retail wants shelf displays, there's a cost there, right? They want to do training to their associates, there's a cost there. Promotions at key times, that's a
Mhm.
cost there. Other hand costs, you need product liability insurance, right? On Amazon.com, you probably don't need product liability insurance, but working with a retailer, you need that insurance to indemnify you from any wrongdoing. If,
Mhm.
if products sold at Best Buy, uh, there's an issue with the customer, right? And then returns, right? Honestly, since you're working with bigger retailers, right? It could possibly amplify your returns,
Mhm.
back to you, right? So just the raw cost is only one small component of everything you look for before you or consider before you go into the retail, from shipping to returns, marketing fees, and so forth.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's not
So,
easy. I would say if it was
oh
easy,
no, not at all.
I
But
would
but
have a
like,
job.
there's a lot that goes into it.
Yep, yep. And retail bound, one thing we do for our clients, the first line of engagement is price modeling to make sure that both the retailer, a distributor, and as well as the brand, they're all making money. If
Mhm.
one of the three is not making money, it ain't gonna work, right? So we gotta make sure all 3 points of a triangle, the retailer, the distributor, and the manufacturer, all have skin in the game, but also are all making money as well. That's how we operate here.
That makes a lot of sense. So I imagine part of this, there's got to be a huge human element to figuring out who to talk to actually get into retail distribution. And I have personally found that one of the ways to get in touch with decision makers tends to be trade shows and industry events and stuff like that, simply because they're walking around there and it's hard to just like find by email or LinkedIn. So I'm curious, Do trade shows and industry events play a big role into getting into retail?
If you're doing yourself, you can hire a company like Retailbound to be your eyes and ears, right? Trade shows are a nice way, but it's a very expensive, way of finding buyers. It's extremely rare that Best Buy is going to stop by your booth or Apple. Or you might find that local mom and pop shop that may stop by and say hi and ask you, but it's extremely rare to have a Best Buy or Target reach out to you. We always say for the bigger retailers, not what you know, it's who you know. Uh, why? Because Best Buy and Target rely on gatekeepers like Retailbound to kind of develop the good from the bad. They don't have time to talk to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Even trade shows. The major trade show come up in a few weeks called the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Over 5,000 exhibitors at that show. Best Buy, there's no way they can see every single brand, right? So they're going to probably see a couple of brands that they're currently working with. And then based on their initiatives for 2025, hey, I'm going to expand into health and wealth. I need more smart rings in my assortment. Then invite more later focus on those brands at the show that are fit for their goals for 2025, right? So for young brands that want to talk to the Best Buys and Apples of the world, and you've already started doing well regionally, you better out trying to work with a company like a Retailbound or something similar that can be your shepherd, your Yoda, right? Your the person that's going to introduce you to the right buyers at the right time.
Yeah, it would seem like the best bet is, based on what you're saying, is that you either want to have some kind of mediator who can put you in touch with the bigger ones quickly, or kind of trade up the food chain if you were doing it that way and start smaller and local. Because yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like if you have if you just go to CES, or if you get like a small booth there at probably a pretty penny, yeah, it's like it's unlikely that somebody's going to just stop by and want to buy up a whole bunch of stock. So it might be easier actually to find people in other ways. Although I do think that attending industry events is good just for getting context. I always feel like that's an underrated thing,
Yeah,
man.
correct.
There's smaller ways to start than the big shows, though.
Yeah, I would say trade shows like CES or the Inspired Home Show or Toy Fair. These are all great shows, right? I kind of caution it's a lot of time, a lot of money. But I said if you're going to a trade show like CES, you know, hopefully it covers one of these initiatives or goals. One, that going to this trade show will allow me to build relationships with my existing retail partners. Right, that's one thing. Okay. Second, going to a trade show like CES will allow me to find new strategic partners. Where it's a new 3PL, a new PR agency, a new digital marketing agency. Right. Another reason why going to a trade show like CES is to find new customers, right? New retailers that you can network, not just here in the US, but globally. Now, last reason why you want maybe go to a trade like CS is for brand awareness, getting the media. Yeah, a lot of people come into Las Vegas to 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 talk about the latest and greatest in seeing tech. So if you're going to a trade like CES, hopefully it covers one of those four goals: working with existing partners, find new partners, try to get media attention, right? Or try to find partners that can help you grow your business in 2025.
Mhm. That makes sense. So this is kind of a left field question from here, but I was just thinking, like, when you put things on retail shelves, it's kind of different than e-commerce. In e-commerce, you guys stand out in that thumbnail. Whether you're just trying to get people's attention on Amazon, or even on your own store, or through a Facebook ad or something like that. But if you want to get sales in a retail environment, you got to stand out on the shelf. So what do people need to be thinking of in terms of packaging that is different than what they would need to consider for e-commerce?
So the biggest issue we see a lot of brands when they make a transition from e-commerce to retail is the box. You are correct. Typically, it's a white box or a brown box with a logo or maybe a shot of the product. Great, but you are correct that in your retail store, you only have probably 2 or 3 seconds to capture someone's attention while they're walking by the shelf. That it should be a white box. I always say, "Are you Apple?" Nope, not Apple. Your box has to tell a story. So maybe it's a lifestyle shot of the product versus just the product itself. Maybe it has bullet point icons that someone can naturally understand what it means without trying to read 3 or 4 bullet points of copy, right? But your box has to be your best unpaid salesperson. And we usually do in our first engagement as consultants is kind of look at the box from an outside look in, hey, what we would improve, right? How we would change it. And then if our clients need help with product packaging, we have experts in our network that we can refer them to actually create their true retail box that they can get feedback from a Best Buy, Target, or Walmart as an example.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose the feedback that you would give to folks individually and the feedback that retailers would give, the most important thing for somebody to do in that case is just be receptive to it and make changes where it makes sense to make changes.
And be open. And by the way, it's not just the retail box that DC brings. They need also think about the shipping box.
Hmm.
Okay, how many in a case back? How about inner case
Hmm.
back? We kind of learned earlier about JBL. Okay, if I can fit 3 speakers on a shelf at Best Buy, and they need a couple units for take in the back. So maybe it's 4 or 6 as a inner case pack. So maybe the master case pack is 24, and they have 4 cases of 6 as an example, right? A lot of young brands, when they're preparing for retail, don't really think about maybe the retail box a little bit, but very few think about the shipping box, the master case pack, and inner case pack. I tell brands that every time the REIT has to open a box in the warehouse and hand pick, to ship to their stores, it costs them money, right? So again, like you said earlier, that hey, make the buyer job easier, right?
Hmm.
You're guaranteed long-term success. Well, want to make it easy is make sure that the inner case backs would equal what they would have on the shelf, plus a little inventory for take from the back room. But so maybe again, if 4 units put on a shelf, right, and say and that's 6, right, and I have 400 cases, much easier. All the store's got to do is open a big giant box, take one inner case pack, but open, without touching it, then ship them to the store. Much easier than having here's 10 units. They got to pick out 6 out of that box of 10. By the way.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, Again, it also seems like you can always have a different retail box and you can have an e-commerce, I would say. It also seems like that's something you could do on a small scale too, if you needed to.
You could. I mean, you again from also from a 3PL, unlimited
Uh-huh.
bin space. We prefer our clients to have the same retail box for
Mhm.
both their Amazon, their DSC, and their retail in the grand scheme. Versus okay,
Mhm.
this brown box is for .com. This white box with some colors that's for retail. Now you have
Mhm.
the same SKU, right? So you're basically double dipping. Right? And a lot of young brands don't have a lot of cash to have the same SKU in 2 different boxes. Same thing for Canada. So Canada, a different let's say the
Mhm.
same product, but now I need bilingual packaging, right? Well, maybe instead of creating a separate SKU, right, I can create a sleeve that can go over the box that has the UPC code, bilingual franchising. But again, our job at Retailbound is to minimize the amount of inventory they're carrying in a warehouse, right? So instead of having the same SKU 3 times, .com, retail, in Canada, it's one box, and then for US and DSC, and then for Canada, they have some sleeves they can put over the existing US box and ship to their Canadian partners up north, by the way.
Mhm. And that would be a good deal more streamlined that way.
Yeah, even unless you have money to burn, then sure, you have multiple boxes.
Most small brand owners don't.
Yeah, they don't, right? So yeah, that's correct. So they can minimize the amount of inventory in my warehouse, right? And so I can
Mhm.
turn it. So again, the .com box and the Rita box in the long term should be one and the same. And if I go to Canada,
Mhm.
maybe instead of creating a brand new box and more stock, create these sleeves that go over the box. When I get an order from a Canadian retail partner like a Best Buy or London Drugs.
That's good advice. So I've got a couple of follow-up questions on some earlier things that we were talking about. And then I want to get after that into kind of like success stories that you've done with Retail Bound, because I think that when we cap things off with just real concrete examples, it'll show folks how all this stuff works in tandem. But first, kind of the follow-up questions. We were talking finances a minute ago. So obviously, retailer is almost certainly going to be bigger as a business entity than the small business owner, and it's usually not going to be close. So realistically speaking, how much negotiation power does the individual brand owner have when they go to the retailer? Or put this another way, do you just have to accept the retailer's terms at face value?
So you are correct that the retailer in probably almost every single case has the leverage.
Hmm.
Only a few brands in like electronics, Apple, Sony, Samsung have a
Hmm.
little more leverage than maybe a young startup from South Korea or France, right? Um, uh, Most time you have to sign a contract, right? It's not gonna it's a boilerplate agreement that it's across all brands, right? But there are things you can look at that may be negotiable. So like back end rebates and fees that could be negotiable versus payment term. Payment term are rarely negotiable at a large level. Um, uh, Product liability insurance is another negotiable thing with a retailer. So may they require $5 million for your coverage, but maybe they want to take 2 million, right? So there are certain things in the agreement are negotiable. Biggest mistake I think a lot of young brands do is they'll have the lawyer read like everything in the agreement, and that's not going to happen, right? You want to try and see in the agreement what things make sense that you can financially afford. Like, oh, I can help freight, I can return, I can offer warranty, I can offer this back end fees, right? But to rely on everything in the agreement, you're probably just wasting your time because the buyer's not going to accept that.
I think that makes sense because and this is just like a good thing for people to remember in negotiation in general. It's like even if you cannot get people to budge on the price or on the terms, sometimes there is room to make difference on the margins. And here it's stuff like insurance and rebates and that sort of thing. I remember as an example that I think more people, regardless of where they come from, can relate to is you need a car at some point, or well, in the US, like in most places, you need a car. Um, and buying one is always some element of negotiation, no matter where you go. But there was a stretch of time in like late 21 when there was a car shortage and you could not negotiate on price. But nevertheless, there was still the option to negotiate on payment terms, on the specific trim model that you could get, warranties, repairs and maintenance by the dealer, like all this stuff people could still negotiate on. And that actually can add up to a huge value if you stop and think about it, because it's just easy to forget about that stuff.
Yeah,
So I
we've
think
done.
this is good to keep
Yeah,
in
that's correct.
mind
There's
that.
there's value adds you can throw on, like, hey, throw in some
Mhm.
free car mats or a free car wash, and we'll call it a day, right? And on the
Yeah.
retail side, maybe, hey, example, we'll forgo on Amazon for the next 90 days if we get a five-store test.
Hmm.
Okay, but, a lot of major retailers like Best Buy, Home Depot, Walmart view Amazon as the enemy if you're
Hmm.
a direct vendor, right? So hey, well, forgo go on Amazon for the next night and give you an exclusive Best Buy for opportunity to get a couple of stores. So here you get there's a little leverage. You know a lot, but there's ways like buying a car or buying a house. There are
Hmm.
things that depending on the buyer, they be open than just hey, what's the lowest cost you can give me at the longest payment term.
That makes sense. So another one of my follow-up questions was, this is on a human level. What's the best way to keep a good relationship with your major retail partners?
It's easy. Or over communicate. Yeah,
Hmm.
don't make promises you can't keep. I would say as a large buyer myself, but maybe different because I was a manufacturer first before I became
Hmm.
a retail buyer. And I always tell my brands that work with me, hey, I only have one pet peeve. It's a lack of follow through. So if I'm reaching out to your brand because, hey, all right, where's the status of my order that I sent you weeks ago? Where's the track information, right? Or hey, we had a promotion, but you're supposed to sign this letter of intent. Where's that letter of intent, right? If
Hmm.
I'm chasing you down, it's probably not a good thing, right? Um,
Yeah.
we're all adults, right? So, and things come up. So I say, hey, Brand, I need that sample for a photo shoot by next Monday. Sure, yo, not a problem. Come
Mhm.
Tuesday, Wednesday, still not here, right? Like, what the heck, right? And I say, Brand, what's going on? Oh, it's still at another retailer or it's at a trade show.
Mhm.
Well, you couldn't pick up a phone and tell me that because now I have to adjust. So I think, For brands that want to do well in retail, right? Just always follow through on your promises. If you tell a buyer you'll get him or her X, Y, and Z by this date, get it done. Things do come up. That's why we have smartphones, we have email, right?
Yeah.
If things come up, always notify your buyers, good or bad, the news so they can adjust their business strategies.
hmm So it really is the fundamentals, like under promise, over deliver, and just communicate a lot, just so you don't
It's
leave
common
them
sense, but
following up with
I can
you.
tell you, in doing this for 32 years in the business, I see a lot of brands. They say, "Oh, that won't happen to me," and they make the same mistake. They tend to,
hmm
because we're all going at different paces, and easy to see things fall through the crack. But I think the biggest
hmm
pet peeve for brands is not to be transparent with their retail community, or really not to over communicate. So if you're going to retail, you got to make sure the resources, the bandwidth to take on that additional work. If not, then companies like Retailbound can step in on an interim basis to launch in retail, but actually measure growth in retail until you are eventually ready to replace us someday with an employee.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So my last question for you is, can you share some success stories of getting products into retail? And I think this will get into what you guys do at Retail Bound.
Sure. So I'll use since your company is big into helping brands who've done real well on crowdfunding, filling their orders. We'll use a good example of that, right? So we had a brand, we still have a brand. They makes a smart ring out of India called Ultra Human. They did probably a little under $1 million between Kickstarter and Indiegogo, right, back in 2022, 2023. They hired us last summer of 2023 to get into retail. They were still on the fence. Maybe we should stay at DSC, but retail is something of interest to us. Smart rings weren't big out there. Aura was probably the first brand that launched into Best Buy. And so, like, hey, we're as good, or we think we're better than Aura. We want to give it a shot as well. So we basically got them ready for retail. So the go-to-market strategies, what makes them better, different than Aura and other brands, or we see lurking in the weeds. Worked on pricing, make sure that they can afford to get into retail with all the fees we just talked about earlier. We looked at retail packaging, right? Looked
Mhm.
at their logistics, how they can fill orders, whether it's dropship or case back. Looked at their wholesale support, where I think a lot of young brand make a big mistake. They do a great job up front making a cool product, but they kind of skimp on the back end support, where it's email support, telephone support, web chat, or even just a FAQ on your website. So we look at that, make sure that we cover those bases, because if a customer from Best Buy has an issue, they want to get those answers resolved, or else they're going to send that product back to Best Buy, and Best Buy's not happy. They don't want a boomerang. They want to sell it and keep it sold. And finally, the last one we look at is marketing. As I said earlier, getting it under Best Buy, that's the easy part. It's the marketing and being aware and trying to sell through that takes a little more of a challenge. We spent a good 60 plus days with Ultra Human in all those things, from market strategies to pricing, the operations to marketing. Once that's done, we use our network of reps and distributors. We are the largest in North America. We have over 200 independent sales reps and 40 distributors here in the U.S. as well as Canada. We cover over 150 major retailers like Apple, Best Buy, Costco, and so forth. We actually got QVC interested in launching with Ultra Human in fourth quarter. It's really rare.
Mhm.
Typically with retailers, doesn't matter if it's brick and mortar or it's catalog or it's on air, they don't really experiment with new brands for Q4. It's only reserved for proven winners, right? But
Mhm.
we'll give it a shot. So they actually tested Ultra Human on Black Friday of 2023 as a whim, and within seconds, not minutes, they sold out of stock. Ultra Human did two other airings in fall of 2023. They did over almost $1.5 million in sales. So that was a great benchmark. Now we have a 24/7 TV show network called QVC. We had a
Mhm.
video, and now we can show other retailers, because many retailers want to be a guinea pig for unknown unproven. So we use the success on QVC and leverage it to get into Verizon stores this year, Walmart stores this year, Shields, InMotion, Best Buy Canada, right? As well as other
Mhm.
retailers online like Costco.com, Kohl's.com, and so forth, right? So just recently, they were on air again at PVC. Did they call it an all-day event. They call it a TSV. They sold in one day between 4,000 to 6,000 rings in one day at about $300 a piece. That's a pretty good payday for both them. But here's a brand that was a crowdfunding item about a year and a half ago, right? We found where they make where the opportunities are in retail, where it's brick and mortar, online, in print, as well as premium incentive. We use our network to get them into the door with those key retailers, right? We negotiated the programs, we worked on forecasting, worked on marketing, and now we're managing the growth in retail in 2025 and beyond. That's one example of a crowdfunding brand that we took into the retail space.
That's very cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I just want to say thank you very much for your time on this. Really appreciate it. Thanks for watching this interview. I appreciate it, and I know that Yohan does too. Details on both our companies are down there in the description. And just in case you missed the name earlier, my name is Brandon, here on behalf of Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping your orders, go to fulfillrite.com and request a quote. We've shipped for thousands of crowdfunding and e-commerce companies before, and we would be happy to help you too. The quote doesn't cost a thing, so if nothing else, you get some good information on pricing. Link down there in the description. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Don't forget to slap some postage on that bell so that we can express ship new videos to you as soon as they drop. And last but not least, if you have any questions, please leave a comment below. I will personally answer as many of them as I can. Thanks for watching.